Water.
Alright, we're good. Alright. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hannah, and I am from the Office of International Services. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon to talk about a lot of students ask about this and express their concern and about this with us at OIS. And it wasn't until recently that I met our speaker today, that we thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to talk about this and invite the campus community and have an open discussion about this particular topic on career choice anxiety in international students. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Alice, I don't want to butcher her name, Alice Ayong Pang from USC Student Health Center, and she will be sharing with us a little bit about career choice anxiety amongst our community. Thank you. Oh, also, we are celebrating International Education Week all week. We have one more program that you all can still partake in. It'll happen today from 3 to 4. It's the International Student Coffee Hour. And we will have some more coffee in case you need it, and also some samosas. So samosas, not mimosas. So hopefully I'll see some of you this afternoon. All right.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Like Hannah said, my name is Alice Ayong Pang. Alice is not on any of my official documents. I am very passionate about helping individuals and organizations become the best versions of themselves. That's why I went into psychology, that's why I do what I do. But yes, I'm very happy to be here at USC. I'm fairly new, just started in October. And you know, you'll hear more about me during my presentation because I like to use myself as an example. In therapy, we talk about using the self as a tool for therapy. And in my presentations, I like to use myself as well because I am a former international student myself. So this topic is, really dear to my heart. I feel passionate about it. I'm so glad I can help this community to address some of the issues that haven't been talked about. Okay, so. Like Hannah said, I work at counseling and mental health over at Ingham. We're on the 3rd floor. We provide individual therapy, group therapy, and outreaches and presentations like this. Okay, so an hour is not a lot for me to share everything I want to, but I have, I guess, one main goal for today is to help you gain tools to make an optimal career choice, okay? The Career Center does an excellent job of preparing you guys for writing CVs, resumes, right, cover letters, things like that. How I see my role in this is to eliminate any kind of cloudiness or anxiety or stress that may get in the way of you kind of really focusing on those tasks, if that makes sense, okay? So 2 things I'm going to talk about is I want to really help you understand and identify career-related anxiety, and we'll define what career anxiety is later in another slide. And I also want to make it practical for you. I hate it when I go to talks and I feel like, oh, that person wasted my time, okay? So one of the things I really think about when I present is to give you guys practical tools that you can use that you can go back home and actually incorporate into your life, okay? Because that's what psychology is all about, right? You need to get things from your head to down here and into your life in order for it to work, okay? Wait, before I start, I want to kind of get a sense of who I'm with in the room. If you guys are undergrad, can you raise your hands? Yeah. Okay, graduate students? Wow, a lot more, okay. And are you all international students on visas? No? Yeah. Yeah? No? Can I ask, did you just come because you were interested?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome. Okay, let's talk about our lives first. My life, your life, our lives, okay? I just want us to take a step back and kind of remember the big picture, okay? I know sometimes, and this was the case for me, in school, you know, sometimes you feel like school, work, career is your whole life, right? But I want to remind you that work, school, career is just one aspect of your entire life, right? Even though it may feel like everything, especially if you're an international student, because everything, your whole world changes, right, when you come over. But just to remember that this is just one area of my life. It doesn't define the entirety of me. And I have all these other things that define me as a person, that make me who I am, right? And so what we're talking about today is just one small aspect, okay? I think that this idea, you know, taking a step back, you know, remembering the big picture, helps a lot to kind of decrease some of the stress and anxiety that you can feel in making a career choice. So I wanted to remind us about that. Okay, let's start a little bit about talking about what anxiety is. Okay? What is anxiety? Okay. Anxiety is actually something that's embedded in our system to help us survive, to protect us, right? It's a protective mechanism. It's your body's natural response to stress, right? And today, the stress that we're talking about is you having to make a career-related decision, okay? Whether it be deciding on a major, deciding if you're gonna stay in the US or go back home, right? Figuring out how you're gonna, you know, find a sponsor for your visa. All of these are stress, and anxiety is just your body's natural response to it, okay? It's a feeling of fear of what's to come, right? Feeling of apprehension, okay, because you're unsure of what will unfold. Examples are like first day of school. If you can you remember when you first came to USC, right? And, you know, to note, good events, positive events can also be stressful, okay? In psychology, we call it eustress, E-U, stress, okay? So things like coming to USC, very exciting, very positive, right? I'm sure your friends, your family were proud of you when you got, you know, admitted. Things like getting married, right? Or having a baby, things like that are all good things, but stressful at the same time. Going on a job interview, getting a speech, you know, I don't know if you noticed, but I was standing here, I felt nervous because I'm a human being as well, right? Each time, I do this all the time, but every time I get nervous because the people I'll be meeting are new, right? And so we'll talk about relaxation later, but I did a couple deep breaths to calm my anxiety, okay? So just to emphasize, anxiety itself is not negative, right? It helps us survive, but it becomes problematic when it's toxic anxiety, okay, or chronic anxiety, okay? And what that looks like is when anxiety is so extreme, okay, and if you've been experiencing it for more than 6 months, okay, and we'll talk about symptoms later, and if it's interfering with life, right? If you're having trouble talking to your professor, or making new friends at this new campus, if it's interfering with any aspect of your life, academic, social, emotional, biological, it might be toxic anxiety, okay, or what we call a clinical level of anxiety. What are some bodily reactions to anxiety, okay? So stressful event happens, okay? If you learn about the brain, when that event happens, there's a switch that turns on, and that it turns on your stress response, okay? And what happens then is all of these things, okay? You get a rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, right? Upset stomach, feeling dizzy, chest pain, hot or cold flashes, things like that. Last year, I was actually at the University of South Florida in Tampa. And over there, what my role was, I was what's called a behavioral health consultant. And what that is a counselor in the student health clinic who works with the doctors and does short-term therapy. Okay, so what that looks like is a student can come in, they'll see a doctor because they have stomach problems, or I get frequent headaches, and the doctor will check them medically, and a lot of the times there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong medically. So that's when they'll come and say, or bring me in, and they'll say, hey, we have Alice here. She's our behavioral health consultant. Why don't we talk to her? And a lot of the times what I found was that the student didn't have any medical problems, but it was anxiety and stress or depression, okay? And students would complain about these things a lot, and we'd find out that it was more psychological, okay? And it was neat because I got to see a lot of international students in the clinic, because I don't know about you, but I'm from Korea, and mental health is just now starting to be addressed in Korea, okay? And I think that may be true in some other Asian countries like China, right? Some other countries, even India, right? Or even Africa, South America. But so what I found was that we have these experiences, but just not the language, right? So if you ask about, do you have anxiety? Students will say, no. But they will, list all these symptoms, okay? And so I share that because just to, I think there's a real power in being able to name something and to put language to it. And so if you find yourself experiencing these things, or you find a friend struggling with it, it might be helpful to, suggest, what, it might be anxiety. You should go talk to someone, or there are a lot of resources online now, on YouTube, on Pinterest. I find a lot of my infograms, things like this. I think I found this on Pinterest. It makes it a lot more approachable, I feel like. So, yeah. So these are bodily reactions you can have to anxiety. Okay. Just really quickly, so what happens when anxiety hits? Okay. In psychology, we talk about these three kind of unhelpful responses, and then the helpful one we want to do. Okay. We call it fight, flight, or freeze. Okay. Some of you may have heard of it. So, example. We give the example of the people in the ancient days a lot. When people had to hunt for their food, right? They would go out into the wilderness, suddenly a bear comes at you, right? That's a stressful event, right? You get anxious, you have fear, and what happens is your body instantly tries to determine whether you need to fight the bear, whether you need to run, or whether you need to pretend you're dead, pretend like you're dead, right? Like freeze, okay? What's interesting is, again, the brain research. So a bear is a real threat, right? Real threat. Our brains can't differentiate between real threat and imagined threat. Example of imagined threat is, professor emails you Sunday night, says, Alice, I need to see you tomorrow at 10, come to my office. Okay, my mind goes to, oh shoot, I'm in trouble, my professor's mad at me, okay? That's an emotional threat. I feel fear, okay? It's not a bear, I imagined it, but my body responds the same way. Oh my gosh, do I fight? Do I get angry at my professor? What do you want? I did everything you told me to, right? Do I flight? Do I ignore his email? Run away, right? Or do I freeze, maybe internally, get really scared and not be able to do anything for, a couple hours, okay? I know that laughter is you know what I mean, right? So these are different ways we can respond to anxiety. I want to show you, let's see. Sorry, I want to show you a short video that depicts what I just talked about.
You know what anxiety feels like. We all do. Everyone experiences anxiety in some way or another. It's something that connects all of us together. Why we feel anxiety? what anxiety feels like? We all do. Everyone experiences anxiety in some way or another. It's something that connects all of us together. Why we feel anxiety and what it really is, that may surprise you. Without anxiety, we'd all be in serious trouble. As soon as your brain senses you're in danger, a little piece of it, called the amygdala, kicks in. It gets your body ready to react. That could mean fight, run away, or shut down. It's called the fight, flight, or freeze response. This reaction goes back millions of years to our distant animal ancestors. Animals whose amygdalae were more sensitive to danger were more likely to stay alive and off the menu. Over millions of generations, this developed into the system we all know as anxiety. So you see, anxiety itself is not all bad. But when there's no immediate life or death threat, and your amygdala keeps telling your body that you're in danger, that's when anxiety becomes a problem. Your amygdala doesn't know the difference between getting eaten and public speaking or failing a test. Human society has only existed for a relatively short time. It's messy and complicated and confusing, and our amygdalae just haven't had time to catch up. So sometimes, when we're in uncomfortable situations, our brains misread the risk and overreact. Our hearts beat faster and we breathe heavily, pulling more oxygen into our bodies. The muscles in our arms and legs tense up and fill with blood. Our skin perspires to cool us down. This would all be great if we needed to fight or run, but instead, we just feel tense and sweaty. Sometimes our minds go blank and we feel like we can't move or talk. That would be great if we needed to hide. Instead, we just feel stuck. When things trigger our anxiety, sometimes we try to avoid them, like our ancestors avoiding a predator. But that can cause problems when those triggers are important parts of life, like going to school or meeting new people, things that won't just give up and go away. So how does knowing all this help? Well, it starts with remembering what's really going on. There's nothing physically wrong with you. It's just your amygdala trying to tell you it thinks you're in danger, even if it gets confused about how much danger you're really in. Understanding why we feel anxiety is an important step in learning to manage it.
Okay. Okay, I hope this was helpful, but as you can see, so we can have different responses, and what I want to emphasize today is that, you know, it's really natural for human beings to want to avoid and to run away from things that cause fear for us. But what happens, we call it the vicious cycle. The more you avoid, what happens in the brain is you get even more afraid of the thing you fear, and you do this negative cycle all over and over again. So, you know, professor, you avoid, you don't go to his office hours, you know, avoid talking to him. That fear will increase. So if you feel even more fear, you're gonna avoid him even more, right? And that's gonna pull you away from succeeding, right? So what I'm gonna teach you today are skills to be able to face the anxiety, okay? That's the only way you're going to be able to address it, okay? So today's topic is career choice anxiety, right? Again, any kind of stress you feel about making a career choice, especially as an international student, right? Because we have so many more things we need to think about when we're deciding on a major, career, life plan, right? So I'm defining career choice anxiety as a feeling of fear related to any kind of career decision making. I want to kind of think about things that contribute to that fear for us, okay? One of them is this unpredictable world of work. And this is not just international students, right? It's your whole generation. It's our generation, right? This fast-changing business world. I found that the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 company in the 1920s was 67 years. Today, it's 15 years, okay? In another decade, they predict that figure will be 10 years. Everything is changing. I think, Facebook bought this, someone bought that, right? That will affect your career, from a macro to a micro level, right? Another thing, so related to that uncertainty of business future, tighter knit global landscape. So we're a global community now, right? My whole life I've been going back and forth from Korea and the US. I don't have an accent because I grew up here when I was younger, but inside I feel 99% Korean. I feel more comfortable speaking in Korean actually. But I've come, so I've had identity issues my whole life. I never really felt like I fit in either in Korea or the US. But now I've decided I'm a global citizen. And that's brought peace to me. I can go anywhere, but I think there's so many advantages of us coming closer together, and there's stress because now you're just not competing with your next student, but you're competing with students all over the world, right? We have 20% international students here at USC. They're from all of these countries, and if you think about it, when you're going out to find jobs, you're gonna be competing with them. So that can cause a lot of stress too, right? I also want to share my story about how the fast-changing business world, the job world can work to your advantage. So example, I don't know why, but since I was younger, I always read psychology books. I think since undergrad, I just had this strong inclination to think about introspective issues. And so in 2005, I decided I wanted to pursue psychology. And so I went to my Korean dad, Asian dad, and said, hey dad, I want to do psychology. And he's like, what the heck is that? Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to do such mushy stuff? Doesn't make sense. He's a very logical, rational kind of person, and so typical Asian parent, go to law school, become a doctor, and I was like, no, I want to change people's lives. It's like why? And this was in Boston. In Boston on a harbor, we were having a really nice lobster dinner, and the night was ruined. I had very little emotional regulation skills then, and so I got really angry, and it was not good. Fast forward, it's 2019, right? Oh my gosh, 14 years later, he is my number one fan. Psychology, like I shared in Korea, it's become a huge topic now. We're one of from the OECD countries, we have the #1 suicide rate. And so people are needing counseling, psychology, and my dad's like, you had a vision. And now he's my #1 fan, right? So perfect example of how things in the past, won't work anymore. Things that weren't in the past may work in the future. So you've really got to open yourself up to possibilities, which is great, but it can also cause a lot of anxiety, right? Another example, I watched Sheryl Sandberg's Harvard commencement speech. She talked about when she was graduating from undergrad, there wasn't even an internet, space, and now she's what is she, CFO or something of Facebook, right? So her point was be open, okay? And so that's my point as well, but I also, want to validate that can cause a lot of fear because you don't know, right? If you don't know, how do you prepare, okay? So all of that can add to our stress. You guys are, you guys know more about this than any other person, but the stress of being an international student here in the U.S. is extreme, right? I think, I don't know about you, but for me, I think there was this mentality of this is normal, like this is something I chose and I have to deal with it, no matter how hard it is. And that's true in some sense, but there's a level of stress a human being can only tolerate, right? And I think, just from the start, the fact that you're here in a totally new country, dealing with a totally new culture, having to learn all these things, is a level of stress that a human being just, can't handle on their own, right? And shouldn't handle on their own, okay? We don't have to talk about the ever-changing immigration laws, right? I just read this morning, so I am, I can share. I'm here on a visa at USC for now. My husband's here as my dependent. There was news today that, you know, H4 spouses won't be able to work anymore. Like, you read those things and it causes fear, right? So all of these things can add to our level of anxiety, career anxiety, okay? Managing family expectations and risks taken. I've heard so many stories of international students that say, I feel this huge burden on my shoulder because all of my family money is put into this education that I am pursuing. I cannot fail, right? That is super stressful. Finding balance between own career passion and family expectations. A lot of students come, they're funded from their government, you know, funded by their family, and they have to do this major, right? You know, I have to be in engineering, or I have to do computer science, but my heart is in creative writing, or I love to do music. You know, how do I compromise that? That is very stressful and can cause a lot of anxiety as well. Okay, can you all relate? Yeah. I think this is the second to last thing, thinking about sources of anxiety. So just want to quickly mention that in psychology, we distinguish between career indecision and chronic indecisiveness. You want to ask yourself, is the anxiety, the inability to make a decision temporary? Is it just now, or is it something of a more chronic indecisiveness that I am dealing with? So indecisiveness is defined as this chronic inability to make decisions in any area of life, right? So if you're someone who has trouble making small decisions, like my husband, he cannot decide where to park, and so he asks me where to park when he's driving, and it drives me crazy. But if you're someone who struggles with, you know, deciding on something in general, having to decide on your career is a huge thing, right? And so if you find that, you know, your struggle is more than just indecision, it might be good to talk to, you know, a mental health counselor or someone, or go to the Career Center and address this. So just want to quickly go through, you know, the categories of sources of anxiety. So we talked about environmental. Did we talk about, no, not necessarily, but, you know, environmental things can be stressful as well, social, psychological, and then you have your thoughts. So with my example of the professor, right? Each and every one of us has a response style to stress. You want to examine yours. Is it helping you or is it hindering you? Okay, and I'm going to give you tips to be able to address that in my later slide. Okay, so I'm going to give you solutions now. Okay, so what do I do now that I, you know, understood that I may, you know, experience anxiety while I'm trying to make a career decision? What do I do? Again, these tips are to help uncloud, you know, I kind of see it as like a gray cloud, all of this anxiety. It's going to help you move that along so you can call the Career Center, so you can call OIS, or you can call the Counseling Center to make the next steps to make a good career decision, okay? So 3 solution categories. 1, relaxation, deep breathing, calm your thoughts, and problem solving. Okay. I'm going to be honest. When I first heard about deep breathing, I was like, what is that Zen, New Agey kind of movement? How does that help with stress? I didn't believe in it. I didn't do it because I didn't believe in it. I do it all the time now. This works because our minds and bodies are so interconnected, okay? When you're under stress, you need to make a career decision, you need to decide on a major, your body will have those anxiety responses because your mind is telling you that you are in danger or you are in threat if you don't make a decision now, okay? Again, anxiety doesn't help us make good decisions, okay? So what deep breathing relaxation does is it quiets the body, which will tell your mind that you are safe. We're okay. I'm not in danger. I can take time to make a good decision, okay? And so these are techniques to relax the body so that we have two modes of being. It's stress response or relaxed response, okay? And so deep breathing, relaxation helps us go into relaxed response so our minds can follow and recognize we are safe, okay? I can make this important decision. I can talk to the career counselor and we can figure out this problem, okay? I want to do some with you. So I'm going to teach you how to deep breathe. Very simple, but it works, okay? So we're going to breathe in through the nose. And when you breathe in, I want you to imagine you're smelling a flower. Okay? Hold it for 1 or 2 seconds, and then breathe out with your mouth. Imagine you're blowing out a candle. With the out breath, I want you to imagine all of your stress and tension kind of leave the body, okay? So we're gonna do a couple together, and I want you to really try to get into it. I know it's hard, in a group this size, but got some, let's see if this works. I don't need the, so we're gonna do a couple together. I like to close my eyes when I do this, but let's do some deep breaths together, okay? Ready? So in, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold a little bit, and out breath. Like you're blowing out a candle. Put your hand on your heart. As you do this, that's soothing as well. Let's breathe in again. Bring in the positive, and then breathe out through the mouth. Let go of all the stress, tension, and anxiety. Let's do 3 more. In breath at 1, 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4. Last one. Deep breath in through the nose. Great job. How did that feel? Feel kind of your stress level decrease a little bit? Yeah. We have the Mindful USC app. Have any of you used it before? Do you know about it? Okay, it's an app, you download it. I downloaded it. I turn it on every morning while I'm brushing my teeth. It helps me get my mind ready for the day. It helps me calm my thoughts down so I can be prepared to have a great day. These other apps are also good for relaxation techniques like this, okay? Okay, so this is my big thing today. If you take away one thing today, I want you to take away this, okay? Cognitive triangle. In psychotherapy, we have what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's based on the idea that our thoughts will affect how we feel and how we behave, okay? We naturally, as human beings, I find, are so prone to have a lot of negative self-talk, right? Negative self-talk. Things like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you need to do better, right? Get all A's. Those thoughts will trigger feelings that cause fear and will affect your behavior. Remember that fight, flight, or freeze response, okay? So it becomes, again, this vicious cycle, okay? And in therapy, what we work on is being able to cut this cycle, okay? By changing how we think, right? So I'm gonna give you a tool, and This is a tool you can find on the internet. I didn't add it on here. It's therapistaid.com. There are worksheets like this on that website that you can practice these skills. But this is a skill that we call cognitive reframing. Basically, it's trying to change your thought, okay? It's trying to change it even if you don't believe it. I tell clients all the time, I don't care if you don't believe the new thought, just say it to yourself, because our objective right now is to change your behavior so you don't run away from the professor anymore. Because you're not gonna graduate. Your visa's gonna end, right? And you're gonna have to go back home. That's terrible, right? So my goal for you right now is to alter this vicious cycle so we can move towards the behavior we want. Go talk to the professor, go to the Career Center, go to OIS, okay? Figure out this problem, okay? What happens is there's an event, okay? So example, situation is getting ready to graduate next semester, okay? How many of you are graduating soon? Yeah? Okay. What happens is we have an automatic thought, okay? When we think about, oh my, I'm graduating in May. Let's say an automatic thought is, oh my gosh, if I don't get an H-1B visa, I will fail. Okay? That's the thought. Okay? Remember that triangle. Thought, feeling, behavior. I'm gonna move back. Here's my feeling wheel. Okay. With that thought, oh my gosh, if I don't get an H-1B visa, I'm gonna fail. What are some feelings that come up? You can use this. What are some feelings that may come up? Please, shout it out. Fear. Fear. Uh-huh. Dread. Anger. What was that? Sad. Sad. Yeah. Sad. Anger. I mean, inadequate is here as well, right? Yep. Excellent job. So with that thought, I have these kind of feelings, right? I'm gonna feel anxious, fearful, and sad. What's the behavior that follows? Because I feel sad or fearful, I'm gonna avoid or withdraw, right? Isolate myself, right? Because I feel all these negative feelings, okay? Or unpleasant feelings, okay? Again, a lot of times what we do in therapy is help students be able to alter this thought. So let's say an alternate thought, well, I'll give you a few seconds. Kind of think about how you would try to train your brain to think differently. How can we take this same situation, okay? Situation hasn't changed. Reality is still the same. You're graduating in May. But instead of automatically submitting yourself to this negative automatic thought, can you slow this down now that you've come to this workshop? Slow it down. I call it catching the thought. Catch the thought and observe it. Is there a way I can change this thought? Be curious. Example could be, you know what? I'm gonna try my best to get my visa. If I don't, I can come up with a different plan, right? Different feelings, right? Yes. A lot less fearful, right? Slightly motivating, maybe not hugely, but at least we're not stuck here, okay? So I'm training my brain to think differently so I can feel differently and behave differently, okay? Your behavior is gonna change if you feel differently. You may seek more help, right? Start researching instead of withdrawing and avoiding, okay? Does this make sense? Yeah? Okay, one more, really quickly. Oh, wait, sorry. Situation 2 was, I am in a major just to please my parents, okay? Automatic thought, my parents made me choose this major and I'm miserable, okay? Feelings, miserable, depressed, unmotivated, angry. What do? Withdraw, lack of effort. I start missing classes because I'm disinterested, okay? Again, slow down this process because it comes automatic. Slow it down. When you're first starting this, I tell clients all the time, write it down. You would be surprised at how awfully you talk to yourself. We're so mean to ourselves. And clients tell me all the time, I would never say this to my friend. I would never say this to my sister. yet you say it to yourself all the time, right? We're so mean to ourselves. You'd be surprised. So I encourage you, if you can write these thoughts down, it really does help you gain self-awareness, okay? Instead of thinking like this, can I think like this? I can make this my main job, right? And create a side hustle with my own passion, right? This new thought gives me a lot more hope, more enthusiasm, right? So it'll get me moving at least a little bit towards figuring out how I can do both of these things. Okay, makes sense? Okay. So this is my last point. If you're feeling anxiety, I want you to think about your rational brain and your emotional brain. Really just simplifying it. Left brain is more rational, problem-solving, logical. Right brain is more emotional, okay? When you're feeling stressed and anxious, your right brain is flaring. It's like fire alarm. We're in trouble. We're in fear, okay? It's blaring at you. When that happens, it is really difficult for your rational left brain to think properly, okay? But that's what we need to do in order to make a career decision, right? We have to think rationally, okay? So, my last tip today is, when your right brain is flaring with anxiety, what I want you to do is try to calm it down. Think of it as 2 steps. I'm gonna calm my right brain down with the breathing techniques, okay? With self-soothing techniques. Kind of like you would talk to a little sister or a little baby, right? They're having a tantrum, like they're scared, they're angry. You know, what would you do for a little child? You would try to console them, right? Oh, it's okay. You're gonna be okay, okay? We all have little children in us. You agree? That child needs to be consoled, comforted, right? I know, it's so hard. I know. What that'll do is it'll quiet the right brain down, the emotional brain down, so that your rational left brain can start problem solving, right? So right brain, left brain, emotional brain, rational brain is my last tip for today. Okay. These are our services that we provide at the Counseling Center. Our main number, you can call us if you want to talk to a counselor. Feel free to call anytime. We also have walk-in hours, 8:30 to 5. If you're ever in crisis, and in crisis we mean if you ever have thoughts about hurting yourself or suicide, feel free to just walk in. No need to call, okay? This is our website. You can go into MySHR and book an appointment as well. Let's see. We have skills workshops, and I brought flyers in the back. Every Wednesday and Thursdays, counselors rotate and provide workshops like this. You know, what I talked about today, I talk about in all of our stress management workshops. So feel free to come to those as well. And that was it. Thank you so much for listening.